Overpowered protagonists, modern action anime, name a more iconic duo. You know, I'm a bit exaggerating, but in a way, I do think it's true. I feel like a lot more of the popular anime these days have overpowered main characters in some form or fashion. Who can blame them though? Mileage may vary, but I do think that overpowered main characters are pretty cool. And if you're looking for recommendations on shows with overpowered main characters, you've come to the right place. Before I begin, I won't be pitting the characters from these shows against each other or ranking them. Do know that I'll be featuring shows with overpowered main characters in terms of physical feats. As much as I would like to talk about something like Classroom of the Elite, Ayano Koji and his big brain manipulation will have to sit this one out. That also means the Blank duo from No Game No Life will be taking a seat too. Problem children are coming from another world, aren't they? Don't worry, No Game No Life actually has a predecessor of sorts, and it'll be the first show on this list. Problem children are coming from another world, aren't they? It's not a prequel to No Game No Life in any way, but the similarities are just uncanny. Both shows take place in a fantasy world where everything revolves around playing games. The worlds are even visually similar, and Black Rabbit fills a similar niche as Steph as a character, even down to the fan service aspects. More importantly, the two shows have a main protagonist who's cool and impressive, both in intellect and resourcefulness. The main thing separating the two, in my opinion, is that Problem Children is more action-oriented. Izio spends more time physically showing off his power, which is one of the most broken abilities the show had in its surprisingly shorter than usual run of 10 episodes. Imagine the ability to break other powers being given to such a proactive character who's not afraid to pull out all the stops to achieve victory. That's a perfect combination if I've seen one. Problem Children did not take off in terms of popularity, but if you want a quick watch of something similar to No Game No Life and haven't heard of this 2013 show before, it's well worth the time investment. It's 10 episodes of, well, mostly Izayoi being a cool badass after all. Sword Art Online. When you take a step back, it does feel like the isekai genre and overpowered protagonists come hand in hand. They're a dime a dozen, and it's no doubt that this combination came into public awareness largely thanks to the popularity of Sword Art Online. After all, it's one of the most common gateway shows, or at least it was back in the 2010s when the show was taken off and starting to become the mainstream juggernaut that it is now. SAO, though, has been discussed to death at this point by fans and detractors, so I want us to turn our eyes on its less popular cousin, SAO Alternative Gale Online. Alternative happens concurrent to the mainline story in the game of GGO. It takes place in the world of Guns and Stars LLENN. The Pink Devil, as she's dubbed, is a furious competitor and quite overpowered if I may add. To be fair, Len and the rest of the cast can be what gamers consider casuals. In the Battle Royale setting of Alternative GGO, the power scaling is considerably down, but that still doesn't detract from the fact that Len's feats put her high above the rest of the field. This is an incredibly tenacious shooter that is nigh impossible to take down, and the season's final battle is an amazing duel to watch. Alternative is a really fun show to watch. You don't actually need to watch the mainline series in order to appreciate it, although the knowledge will let you catch a few Easter eggs here and there, and it also has a more compressed and simpler storyline, allowing the fierce and thrilling gunfights to take the center stage alongside the main character's growth, which is something that I find underrated. With a second season on the horizon, there's no time better to be watching this series than right now. Overlord. Alternative GGO is an overall lighthearted watch. It's quite positive in terms of overall mood, in spite of having a few moments with dark implications. But if you felt that you wanted a bit more ruthlessness in your game anime, then Overlord might be your jam. Now, I do think that most people nowadays are familiar with the show and its popular protagonist, the Skeleton Lord Ainz. Fans also know that he's one of the strongest characters around, so why don't we take some time to enjoy his exploits while watching him raise hell against all those who oppose him. Spanning multiple seasons, Overlord is a series that ought to give you hours of fun if you enjoy watching overpowered main characters. It has no shortage of scenes that show us how awesome Lord Ainz is. And if that's not enough, then we have an entourage of characters emphasizing it. It's also one of the isekai from its era with a really excellent production quality, and care put into making the whole thing look and sound good. There's a lot to unpack in its multiple seasons, but Overlord really is one of the top recommendations I can give, especially if you're someone who doesn't mind hilariously overpowered characters who can be quite amoral and their quest to build their kingdom from scratch. That time I got reincarnated as a slime. It's impossible to talk about Overlord without at least giving a mention to its anime cousin, the time I got reincarnated as a slime. Just like Overlord, Slime features a 30-something-year-old adult sent into a fantasy world, and with their super loyal comrades by their side, they look to explore the world and eventually build their own dominion over it. How the worlds get developed are similar, but the differences are also really noticeable with one glance. The whole mood and world of Slime is noticeably brighter, and along the way with it comes a show that is a tad more lighthearted in a lot of ways. Rimuru is also just as overpowered as Ainz is, and his ascension from lowly slime to powerful demon overlord, pun intended, is a truly spectacular watch. I actually enjoyed the time I got reincarnated as a slime more. While I gave a lot of praise to Overlord earlier, it does get hampered by a hit-or-miss arc, the Lizardmen arc, and the production quality was clearly slipping in the latter seasons. Slime isn't burdened by such as blatantly, and I do enjoy the slightly more lighthearted atmosphere that it brings. Still, the two shows are two sides of the same coin, featuring two overpowered main characters who act somewhat differently and yet are similar in more ways than one. So if you watch a series, then don't forget to also watch the other. Both series combined for almost 10 seasons worth of content total, so watching both will keep you quite busy and satisfied. The Rising of Shield Hero. What Rimuru does bring to the table is the whole weak to strong element that appeals to so many anime fans. Sure, his growth from slime to the strongest being in the world happens in quite a short amount of time, but it's the whole underdog premise that counts. It's a theme that isekai likes to toy around with, and another pronounced example can be found in this next series, The Rising of the Shield Hero. I have to admit though, the power scaling has been toned down for this series, and now for me doesn't quite bring the same overpowered craziness the other two previous protagonists do. However, he's clearly the only one competent among the heroes, and it adds a cool angle to his status of being the shunned hero. The Rising of the Shield Hero is a cool story that has some redemptive themes, whether it works or not through the protagonist's actions and how he slowly learns to care and let go of his edge is all up to the viewer's mileage. Either way, that, along with the revenge plot, provides a strong foundation that kept anime fans watching, making Shield Hero one of the more popular franchises at the tail end of the previous decade. Unfortunately, once the revenge plot was done, the series lost quite a lot of its luster. There's still something for isekai fans in the second and third season, but we can't deny it's quite the big fall from grace. Arifureta. On the flip side, Arifureta runs with the same elements and actually gets better as time goes on. The revenge premise is still there, and you got a protagonist that's edgier and more traditionally overpowered. The adventure and the exploration aspect also makes the show very fun to watch, but not as fun as seeing Hajime and his harem mow down enemy after enemy with their insane powers. On the other hand, when I say that Arifureta gets better the longer it goes on, there's a bit of a caveat to it. When you have a first season with monster visuals this bad, and a surprising lack of background and context building, getting better isn't a high bar to scale. To its credit, when the revenge plot was gotten over with, Arifureta still has a very interesting world to get people invested, and the fun character dynamics with Hajime and his main party more than makes for an enjoyable watch. The arcs in Season 2 are also paced adequately. Watching Hajime and party deal with all sorts of dangers the powerhouses of the world can throw at them is nothing short of satisfying, especially when said dangers can no longer just be brute forcing their way through and require the team to dig into their bag of tricks and come up with more creative solutions.
Sheena.
Eminence in Shadow. The revenge stories and the adventures that showcase how powerful our protagonists are may be cool and all, but you might be looking for something more tongue-in-cheek. In that case, may I introduce you to Eminence in Shadow. Whether you enjoy the anime tropes like secret organizations, over-the-top characters, and the oh-so-edgy powers or not, Eminence in Shadow is here to give you a good time with its unapologetic, unbridled approach in poking fun at these things, ironically or not. It is a standout in the world of modern anime, and the cool thing about it is that it doesn't even market itself as such. Well, at least in a super obvious manner like Konosuba or Uncle from Another World. If you haven't watched it, you may think that it's one of those dark, overpowered protagonist shows with a harem that takes itself seriously, but it can't be further from the truth. Eminence in Shadow is a blessing, especially for people who just want to have some fun at the expense of some anime tropes that seem to have overstayed their welcome. Another thing I can commend, though, is that the anime fools you into thinking that it's some lighthearted parody thing, when it's actually got some legitimately cool character writing and a rather engaging narrative under all that. Banished from the hero's party. We leave the world of isekai and move on to more honest fantasy settings, starting out with a show that I feel is grossly underrated. Banished from the hero's party may not provide a very attention-grabbing title, given that such a premise has become really common from the time 2021 rolled around. To my surprise, though, the show did not turn out to be a power fantasy where the protagonist, the initially overpowered Red, sets out to prove everyone wrong after being banished from his party due to being left behind in power. At least, not to the extent that Shield Hero tries to do it. It's a story that leans towards the slice of life and romance genres, and what serves as the foundation for the plot is the relationship between the protagonist and his primary love interest, Rit. The couple and their interactions are charming as ever, and just how wholesome the show is gives it something notable compared to the other previous shows that we tackled on the list. Sure, production quality could use some work at times, but I think that the show more than makes up for it by being a breath of fresh air among the wave of action series that are all about proving the world wrong. It feels different from what you would expect after hearing the title, and it's a true testament to the good old proverb to never judge a book by its cover. Soothing and wholesome, not something you would expect to find in a fantasy story featuring a character who's initially overpowered. I do wonder if the show counts for the list though, because, well, Red is only overpowered at the start. But I can't help but want to recommend it to you guys. It truly is a dark horse in its season. Have you watched this underrated gem yet? Do tell me in the comment section, and hit the like button and subscribe buttons too if you're enjoying the video so far. I would really appreciate your help in letting this channel grow, and likes and subscriptions are the best way to do it. God of High School. Around Around the start of the decade, there's this thing where some of the biggest webtoons got the honor of getting anime adaptations. Talk about a cultural exchange with both Korea and Japan. It's a crossover that many people were waiting to see happen, and it further opened my eyes as to how many of these webtoons have overpowered characters in it. The one among the 3 adaptations that got traction is The God of High School. Right off the bat, it wastes no time in letting the sparks fly and heating things up with the intense fights, the one thing that the show ended up being known for the most. That and the protagonist, who didn't always win, but gets some of the strongest power-ups as the series progresses, allowing him to overcome challenges coming in his way. It's also got a lot of rather interesting characters with cool powers to keep the audience watching. I just feel like it's a shame that the adaptation was rather rushed. Still, if you are someone who loves crazy martial arts with a blend of supernatural powers, or want to relive the days of playing fighting games with these elements, God of High School may just be the anime for you. Noblesse.
上で戦っていたのはお前か。誰が口を開くことを許した。体が。お前には動くことも許可していない。
The last of the big 3 webtoon adaptations also features in this video, Noblesse. Noblesse is less about the high-octane, fast-paced fights as our previous anime, but feels more like a couple of Japanese titles that we'll be featuring in just a short while. After all, it's more methodical in how it tells the life and times of Rai, a noble who awakens after an extended slumber of over 800 years. Instead of focusing mainly on the fights, it delves into more about his status as the Noblesse and how he interacts with the world around him. Being the strongest noble of them all comes with a plethora of powers, but along with it comes dangers that lurk in every corner and organizations that cannot be trusted. With each arc, more mysteries get uncovered, and we get to learn more about the characters and the world they live in. It does have its fair share of cool fights, though none as eye-catching as the best ones from The God of High School. If you've watched a couple of anime already, it's quite easy to guess what you're gonna get, judging by the posters and the overall dark vibe of the series. If you're up for a slightly different flavor of a familiar experience, you should give this one a try. Assassination Classroom. We've had a streak of 2 consecutive shows where anime school plays a role in the setting. It further cements how schools seem to be the most common setting in a lot of popular anime. Let's keep that streak going with the next school anime lined up, which has one of the coolest possible teachers around. I'm talking about Koro-sensei and Assassination Classroom. The idea behind Assassination Classroom is pretty simple. Students have to band together to defeat their alien octopus of a teacher in order to save the world from destruction. Yeah, sounds simple until you realize that their teacher is one of the most broken characters there is. Perhaps the point of emphasis for the students is more on the journey, where a band of misfits like them grow together and learn a few things from their teacher before the eventual graduation. Their time would come in the future for sure, but before that, we as the audience can sit back and enjoy a really fun journey ahead. One that's full of trials, epic battles, and tears. Assassination Classroom has had a great run, and it's really all about the journey and watching these students grow over the course of the years. It's a lot of fun, and if you enjoyed the first season, the second season manages to make things even better.
その数瞬を逃さない。流れるように2本目の刃を抜くが早いか。
Akashic Records.
行くわよ。来世の試練よ。
Koro-sensei is not the only overpowered teacher in town, however. If you prefer a world and characters that are a bit more conventional, then how about taking the trip to Alzano's magic school and meet Glenn Radars? Yes, I'm talking about that Glenn Radars from Akashic Records. It's one of the relics of a bygone era, back when we still have these magic school light novel shows that popped up in drones every season. Still, it's one of the better ones, despite being adapted after the boom, and it has a lot to do with the characters' chemistry. Glenn may seem like one of the worst candidates for the job of training aspiring mages, but he's also one of the coolest teachers around, proving that there is a lot more to learn than just books and knowledge. And hey, it also helps if you have the ability to completely nullify magic. His chemistry with the two main girls, Sistine and Rumia, is great, but so is the bond with the students, as we'll get to see throughout the show's progress. If I can give it anything, I would say that Akashic Records has a really strong start, with two very enjoyable arcs starting it off. Admittedly, the pacing starts to slip at the second half, as is tradition for light novel adaptations, but the series still remains a fun watch overall. It's got a notably cool soundtrack for the genre in my opinion, and the character designs look really great. If you're a fan of Magic School anime and want one that offers some genuinely cool main characters that you likely wouldn't mind hanging out with, this show is for you. The Irregular at Magic High School. We're not quite done with magic schools just yet. Never mind Akashic Records being a relic of the past when it aired, how about something from more around the time of the boom itself, and one that has endured for the years, refusing to be buried in the sands of time, even entering into the new decade. I'm talking about the Irregular at Magic High School. Irregular at Magic High chronicles the story of two siblings, Tatsuya and Miyuki, as they get entangled with politics, high-stakes competitions, and even military invasions. While Miyuki's super talented, and it showed, Tatsuya did not do so hot in his entrance exam, getting branded as an underachiever. But as we learned, there's more to life than grades and entrance exams and what they categorize you as. The Irregular at Magic High School was one of the more popular franchises back in the 2010s, and you'd be hard-pressed to find someone who didn't recognize the show from back then. While many people meme the show for its crazy overpowered protag and his sister and friends who constantly fawn over him or his praise, it's also got some legitimately good production quality. Its world of magic and political intrigue is also something that caught people's eyes, and I really like how magic in this world gets incorporated with scientific concepts. The show can be a hit or miss for general audiences, but for those who find watching an overpowered hero show off his feats, it's awesome. Misfit of Demon King Academy.
加減しても死ぬか仕方のないインガル蘇生の魔法そんな魔法あるのか
If you think the previous show takes itself a bit too seriously though, you can check out its modern cousin, Misfit of Demon Academy. This time, all bets are off, and the show simply takes the overpowered main character concept and runs with it. There's not a lot of pretense of tension, unlike with Irregular, and Anos is more than willing to show off how superior he is to the world he wakes up in after thousands of years. While Tatsuya still performs within the bounds of some logic for the most part, Anos simply does things in the most impossibly dumb ways possible, and it's glorious. Misfit of Demon King Academy is a light novel version of the overpowered hero parody genre, so it's pretty obvious what you'll see and expect from the get-go. That doesn't make it any less fun though, and while there's not really any tension with Anos himself, the show still finds time to put in some heartfelt moments featuring the supportive characters that bring you back to earth in a contemplative mood. It won't take too long for you to decide if this is the stuff that you'll enjoy, and if you liked it, there's season 2 that you can also catch.
まさか嘘だろ本当にやったに880やつ先だ
Mashle.
そんな謝ってばかりのやつとつるんでたらね
謝るのはお前の方
Mashle is another choice if you've been enjoying these overpowered characters wrecking face in magic schools. Right off the bat, you can see that Mashle is quite frankly a show built off of knockoffs. A story of an oddball reject who is somehow unable to connect with the basic powers in the world, some shonen power scaling, a world and a supporting cast much like what you'd see from Harry Potter, and an appearance and art style that strongly reminds you of a certain bald hero. It's not very original, but why should it be? Why should it try to be super original when it's got so much entertainment value the very moment its brand of comedy clicks with you. You can immediately see where this is going with one look at the concept art, but it's not like that matters in the long run if you can tell yourself that you'll like it. It properly sets your expectations, and you can fully embrace the moment and have the time of your life every second that you see Mash start showing off the fruits of his training and destroying all those who dare look down on him. A lot of times in a downright comical way, too. The comedy is mostly on point, with the cast providing their fair share of entertainment with their very strong and pronounced personalities.
できるものなら
魔法魔法魔法
One Punch Man.
帰っていいか。
こいつ風神逆
チェックメイト。
While we're at it, why not feature the poster child of the genre, the one and only One Punch Man? It's a show that needs a little introduction, as One Punch Man is probably the title people immediately think of when it comes to overpowered main characters. Being one of the biggest shows of the 2010s, you can clearly see One Punch Man's influence in a lot of overpowered main character anime that lean towards the more comedic and lighthearted side like Mashle. There's just something magical about these kinds of anime where a lot of the usual trope gets turned up to overdrive and people can just sit back and laugh at the absurdity of it all. No one does these kinds of parody comedies better than One Punch Man, and it, alongside the advent of superheroes and pop culture in the mid-2010s, made it a household name immediately. It's a smashing success that took advantage of the context in real life, but it's also a pretty damn good show in its own right. We can point to the absurdity and the comedy as its chief draw, but One Punch Man also has no shortage of interesting characters who carry with them their own quirks. And while there's really no threat to Saitama and his easy domination against any villain, the side characters bring a lot of emotional depth and stakes to the show. And with an amazing soundtrack complementing key moments in their development, they help make One Punch Man a winner. Mob Psycho 100. One Punch Man is a great show, but I feel that there are people wanting a similar thing but a tad bit more serious. The author probably had that idea in mind too. After all, he had another very popular work after One Punch Man, and that's Mob Psycho 100. Mob Psycho 100 made an impact upon its debut in the anime world, and that is no understatement. I can confidently say that it's one of the best shows in 2016, and with each subsequent season, it consistently maintains the same awesome quality that it has. It's exciting due to its fights, and the time just flies watching this action series. Lovable characters who you just can't help but root for as you see their amazing development over the course of the series? Check. A series of arcs that are quite simple, never overstay their welcome, and are very immersive? Check. Animation and fights so insane that they can put the big guns like Ufotable to shame? Check, check, and check. To say that Mob Psycho is in contention for the best series in the decade is something that I won't even bat an eye at. It is just that good, and you're missing out big time if you haven't seen it just yet. The Disastrous Life of Saiki K.
そんなわけで食事でもどう？
あ、どんなわけだよ。
僕の名前はサイキクスオ。超能力者である。
And with all the hype that I've generated for the past few shows, I think it's time to wrap this up with a downturn. The falling action in the plot structure pyramid, if you will. It's time to wind down and go back to the chill zone with an anime featuring a main character just as overpowered and similar as Mob. I'm talking about the Disastrous Life of Saiki K. If you're one of the people who's watched Mob Psycho and you wanted more, this could be a more casual alternative to have your fix. The main characters are similar, but Saiki K is a series of shorts, and it leans toward more full-on comedy. Its world is just as colorful, and the vibes for Saiki K are a bit more upbeat. It may not have the epic animation and eye-popping fight scenes by which many fans judge an anime by these days, but it more than makes up for it with its comedy and overall very relaxed nature. Whether you like comedy anime or not, it won't hurt to give this one a shot.
まったく虫が出たらどうゴキブリがいた基本的に無敵の僕だが唯一苦手なものがあるそれは虫だ
And if you have some other shows that you'd love to recommend, don't hesitate to let your voices be heard and tell me in the comments section. We here at Honest 10 would love to hear your thoughts and feedback regarding these kinds of content. And I hope that you all had fun watching this video and listening to my passionate ramblings. Thanks for the time, and thank you for watching. I hope to see you all next time.